who we are is not affected by our circumstances, it's not affected by our surroundings. We interact with the world, and life is filled with challenges, and we are here to do things, and the things that we're here to do, every one of our journeys involves difficulties and struggles and challenges, and lots of beauty and joy, and they're complex and messy. And ultimately, if we can understand it and relate to it correctly, it's all beautiful. It's just not all easy. But at the end of the day, the part of us that is interacting with the world, and interacting with the world carries some risk. Right? There's a risk of being influenced by the world rather than influencing the world. And we've talked about this idea that some people, have separate names when they go to work just to make sure that they're separating that part of their life from their real self. We don't do that because our approach specifically is we want to take our actual real self into the world and share what we have, share our values, share what we know, share the divinity, share the message with the world, integrate godliness into the world, elevate the world. So we want to be engaged in the world. That being said, it's understandable why some people are hesitant to go there, because the moment that it's, in a sense, actually, I think this just sort of landed for me. A very perhaps appropriate metaphor is, people who are, let's say, spies, or people who do maybe undercover work, for like intelligence or a police department. Sometimes when they're doing the most important work, it can get extremely messy and traumatizing and can really hurt people for life. Why? Because if the best spy work involves really integrating into the target society, right? Eli Cohen, for example. May his remains be recovered and receive a appropriate burial. Take it from Jan Mamish, he deserves it. Even better, we should have Mashiach and he should be back. Amen. But, the last mission that he went on before he left, he didn't want to go. Why? Because he was tearing himself into pieces. He would go there and embed himself, and the reason he was so successful was because, and the reason that he, saved so many lives was because he was so effective at really embedding himself and becoming a part of the culture, a part of the society, a part of the top brass. And to do that without actually getting caught up in that is probably, if you're going all the way and doing the best job possible, it's probably borderline impossible to not get caught up in it a little bit. Right? And that's why people who do, deep undercover work, whether it's for intelligence or for police department, whatever it is, it's very, very difficult work. It's emotionally difficult, and one mission sometimes can leave someone with challenges that they're going to be struggling with for the rest of their lives. Because in order to fulfill the mission successfully, they really have to become attached to the people that they ultimately see as an enemy or as a threat, which is why they're doing the work they're doing. And the better a job they do, the more they're at risk of getting hurt and getting confused and getting messed up. And it's the same thing here. We want to be involved in the world so that we can be a channel for godliness, to share our values, to share the light of Torah with the world. But it carries a substantial degree of risk. And it's costly, and it requires a lot of maintenance. It requires daily downtime to slow down and to remember who we are and why we're here and what this is all about. So that when we go out, we are the influencer and not the influencee. There was actually someone who several decades ago, I didn't hear the story firsthand, but as far as I've heard, it was said about the Satmar of Rabbi Yisroel from Satmar, who spoke very highly in reverence of the work that shluchim do around the world, going out and sharing, Torah and mitzvahs, Judaism with Jews all around the world in these remote places. And so someone responded and said, well, if you value that and you see how good it is, why don't you send your people to do it? And his response was, as the story goes, I don't have the shoulders that the Lubavitcher Rebbe has. I don't have broad enough shoulders to take responsibility of all of my followers going out there and embedding themselves and getting involved. I can't take that responsibility. So, and the Rebbe was able to take that responsibility and does take that responsibility. So, but that doesn't mean that the other side of the coin is not there. It's there. So, the message here in the name Shmois is that yes, the purpose of all of existence is for the universe, for every part of the universe, as much as possible of the universe to be elevated, to integrate divinity into as much as possible of the universe, which necessarily depends on the agents who are executing this mission interacting with the world, to integrate divinity into the world through their interactions, to elevate the world through their interactions. And the message here is, remember, when the Jewish people went into Egypt, and it was as brutal an oppression as there has ever been. As brutal a slavery as there has ever been. At the end of the day, the truth of who every one of them was never subject to Egypt. It was never subject to the challenges of Egypt. It was never subject to the influence of Egypt. It was never at risk even for a moment, because who we are is our truest identity, who we actually are inside beneath all the layers, is absolute infinity, pure, unadulterated divinity, godliness. That's who we are deep down inside.